Welcome to the Growth Catalyst Show, where we believe that growth could come in many forms: professional, personal, company, sales, you name it. I'm your host, Dan Mahoney, founder of Transcendent Sales Solutions and a guide to a world of growth possibilities. I've spent my career empowering companies and their people with strategies that accelerate growth. I'm here to bring you stories of these business leaders and their trusted advisors to gain insights into their journeys and learn how they fuel their own growth. Just maybe their journey could become part of your own growth story. Are you ready? Let's grow.
Welcome to the next edition of the Growth Catalyst Show. I'm your host, Dan Mahoney, and I'm here at my next guest. Mark Burr is an accomplished commercial real estate attorney and president at the law offices of S. Mark Burr, PC. He represents owners, developers, and investors in acquiring and developing, leasing and financing, or selling commercial real estate properties. Mark holds a JD from the University of Alabama School of Law. Mark, welcome to the Growth Catalyst Show.
Thank you, Dan. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you here. So I always look forward to getting ready for these shows because I learn things about people that I've known, and I've known you for a few years. I learned things I didn't know about. I know that you went to law school at the University of Alabama because you roll that tide all the time, but I did not know that you had an undergrad from UGA.
That is correct. I got out of University of Georgia in 1983, and I finished at Alabama Law School in 1989.
Talk not a house divided or a man divided. What are you?
The inevitable question is, why do you go with the graduate school rather than the undergraduate school? And the answer is very simply, just the way it's evolved. I live in a house where my wife is a Georgia graduate, my daughter is a Georgia graduate, my son-in-law's family has had Georgia season tickets for over 30 years. I bleed 70-30 Crimson. And when they're not playing each other, I hope for both teams to win. When they play each other, I respect the family and respect the flag a little bit, but more of me is happy when Alabama wins than when Georgia wins.
Well, I've never heard you say anything bad about Georgia like most Alabama fans, and now that explains it.
There you go.
And I'm going to take a guess here based on your background. Are you originally from Texas?
No, I am not. My father was a government employee, and I was born in North Carolina. With the exception of 3 years in Massachusetts, I've lived in the South all of my adult life. My first job out of law school was in Dallas. I started there. I was there about 18 months. I came back to a job in Birmingham for a few years, and in 94 moved to Atlanta, and I've lived here ever since.
I saw something on your profile because I know you had worked in Texas first. Your first job was a bankruptcy attorney. We'll get into that, but you wrote on your LinkedIn profile, I'm admitting to practicing law in Georgia, Texas, and Alabama.
That's correct. That's
you're
right.
only admitting. Is there any other place you practice you're not admitting?
Oh, I can't say anything about that. For the bar authorities who are listening, what I will say is I always associate local counsel in those other states.
Oh, understood. I get it now. So when was something going into law something you always decided you wanted to do from a young age, or did you just kind of find your way into it? What was from your undergrad degree?
I am the only lawyer in my family. I have a brother and I guess a cousin-in-law who is a little bit younger than me, and he also went to law school. But through my dad's work, he worked around lawyers a lot. He, of course, hired attorneys when he was in his government job. I just decided that I want to do it. And to use your words, I kind of fell into it. I was trying to decide between law school and business school, and something pointed me to law school. And the education I received, Dan, the way I think, you hear this trite phrase about think like a lawyer. Yeah, it happens. You spend 3 years looking at problems differently than you might otherwise do, and you come out and your whole analytic capability and your analytical tools are far greater. And I'm very, very happy that I made the choice to go to law school for the educational aspect.
And again, didn't even go close to the education you did. But when I went and got my MBA, I don't remember anything, quote unquote, I learned in class, so to speak, 15, 20, 16 years ago. But it did teach me a critical way of thinking that I had never looked and approached problems before, after. And that's what it taught me the most in that 2-year period of taking that MBA program.
That's right.
So, what got you to start in bankruptcy law?
Well, at the time, I was coming out of law school. It was the late 80s. There was a significant real estate recession going on in Texas. There were economic conditions were down about that time. This is when the junk bond era was imploding. Michael Milken was on his downswing. One of the excesses of real estate finance that we go through from time to time was happening. Bankruptcy law was the hot ticket in Texas. They were especially hard hit during that recession. And I visited the firm. I visited Dallas. I thought it'd be a nice place to start a career. I had moved around a lot with my dad's job. Turns out that the place was great, but the economy was worse than I figured. So I spent 18 months in Dallas, liked living there, but circumstances brought me back to the Southeast. And when I got back to Birmingham, they didn't need bankruptcy experience. I ended up working in-house legal department of a life insurance company that did a lot of commercial real estate finance. And this was kind of like my on-the-job training. I had a great teacher, a guy named Rick Fruitnick, taught me everything. He taught me how to be practical, how to be sensible. And that experience I fall back on even today. It was a wonderful learning experience, and I'm very grateful that life directed me that way.
Now, you started your own firm, and then I saw in your background you maybe went and worked for Womby Bond, and then went back and started your firm again. Is that right? That's what I saw in your profile.
That is correct. So I've been doing this for over 30 years, which is why, like you, I have no hair up top.
Got more than you, buddy.
You certainly do, and for people watching, we'll confirm that. I bounced around for a while. In 2003, I opened my own practice. And I did that for about 10 years. Somehow I got through the really bad times in the financial crisis. Again, real estate got hit. There wasn't a whole lot to do those days. I ended up having an opportunity to go to work for a law firm at that time called Womble, Carlisle, Sandridge, and Rice. Womble Carlisle was a pretty well-known Southeastern law firm. They're based in North Carolina. They had offices here. I joined the Atlanta office in 2014. Womble Carlisle merged with a British firm, Bond Dickinson, and now they're a intercontinental law firm. But I determined that the personality needed for that kind of job was not something I had. So I'm back out on my own, and I've not looked back.
And, again, and I respect that 30 years in business and, as an entrepreneur, and you're a successful entrepreneur and very successful in what you do. What are some things you've learned along the way, just being as a successful business owner and entrepreneur?
Well, a couple of things I've learned along the way. Number one, I've been blessed to have some clients that have been with me for 25 years. And I learned rather early on in that when you're hiring somebody, you like doing business with the person. You don't necessarily care about what flag they're flying at the time. You hit it off with people. You do good business. You form a decent working relationship with them. I've been through 4 or 5 spots in my career. Some of these clients I've had for 20 plus years have also been through 4 or 5 spots in their careers. And when we're working on a transaction, none of that matters. We know each other. We know how we work. They know my strengths. I know their strengths. For me, I'm just gratified that people have hung around that long. And, I am a believer in karma. What goes around does come around. You treat people fairly, and hopefully they remember you. And that has played out to the positive for me much more often than it has a negative.
And again, and just like any other business, those economic downturns, I'm sure that the real estate business typically in those usually take the hits. How do you get through those? And how do you get through those times?
It is a cyclical business. You'll have a boom period like you did in 2005, 2006. Some people get a little over their skis, as it were. You start realizing that services can't make what they used to make. So there are, modifications have to be made. Sometimes bankers, get a little more concerned with their loan terms than they were previously when you made them. So when loans come up for renewal, they require more collateral, they require pay downs. When that happens in a sufficient amount of critical mass, you have a big problem like we did in 2008 to 2012. How do you get through those things? There's always work to do to work the things out, right? There's always modification terms. There are always negotiations when transactions are in the ditch. Sometimes they can't be fixed, and people end up in court. And I do not litigate. I'm not a courtroom lawyer. But if in a position like mine, a transaction lawyer, you try to make sure that you do everything to keep them out of court, because if the guy is already, if the developer can already make his payments on his loan, he sure doesn't have any money to pay lawyers to go fight over a deal that's already gone south. But you get through it. People like me have when the developer's in trouble, they need somebody who can help them. I've got the experience. I don't charge as much as a big law firm would charge to help him with that. And that's how I got through it.
Let's take a moment for a quick word from our sponsor. This episode of the Growth Catalyst Show was brought to you by Transcendent Sales Solutions. Whether your company is facing uncertainty, declining sales, or resource limitations, Transcendent Sales has the solution. Their team has decades of experience helping businesses find alignment to meet their growth goals and transforming underperforming sales organizations into revenue-producing market leaders. They take a hands-on, results-oriented approach to solving sales challenges. Visit transcendentsales.com to learn more and subscribe to the bi-weekly Growth Catalyst newsletter for insightful growth strategies. Transcendent Sales Solutions, empowering businesses to reach new heights. And now, back to the show.
And again, you mentioned you do almost all transactional work. Have you ever done litigation work, or why not the litigation side?
I have tried one case in my career. For the lawyers that might be listening to this, I got as far as a summary judgment motion, and then the judge, the courtly Southern judge, says, "Gentlemen, why don't y'all go out in the hall and see if you can solve this on your own?" Which translates as, "Go fix this, boys. I don't want to hear anymore." And we did. We worked it out. The reason I don't litigate, and this is going to sound crass, but I don't enjoy the theatrics. I don't enjoy the ancillary parts. I don't enjoy the things you have to do to convince the jury that you're right and the other side's wrong. I was taught that the trial is a search for the truth. You work hard, the other side works hard, bump heads, and the truth pops out. We're all trying to get to the right answer. And the jury system is fantastic at getting to the right answer as long as it doesn't have all the theatrics and all the stuff that is emotionally significant, maybe. And in some cases, emotion is appropriate, like tort cases. But in contract cases and business cases, the facts are what the facts are. The numbers don't lie. Rental rate went down. Value of collateral went down. Interest rates went up. How do we fix this? And I just have found that there's not a whole lot, I don't want to say a whole lot of interest, but there's too much emphasis placed on motion practice. There's too much emphasis placed on checking the right boxes before you actually get the people in a room and go, all right, how are we going to figure this out? So it just doesn't fit my personality.
Well, and I would think too, it's especially in a jury trial about something very technical and complicated about that, it would be hard to even, educate somebody on how do they make that right decision. Like just, not knowing what they don't know.
No, you're right. If people understand that, if there's a personal injury case that somebody ran the red light and that person who ran the red light typically is at fault. I get that, right? That's pretty easy to explain. Dan, you're right. If you're trying to explain, and forgive me for boring people to death with this, but if you're trying to explain commercial defeasance to 12 people who aren't bankers, who are the proverbial jury of the peers, it goes right over their head. And bless their hearts, I'm not suggesting they can't understand it. I'm just saying that they're not going to understand the technical point. They're going to look at who spoke better, whose tie was nicer, and adjudicate things the way that they see fit. Again, not running down the jury system. I just think that some technical cases are better off in arbitration or mediation than they are in front of a jury.
And back to, you had mentioned you had a mentor, and all of us have mentors in our life. But what was it about real estate? I mean, real estate attorney and being real estate, it's a technical thing, but it's not the most exciting thing for a lot of people. And I mean, it's like, you do what? Like, oh, you're that guy there that's at the real estate closing, watching all those papers fly back and forth. But what was it about it that got you, excited about real estate?
I had After about the first semester of law school, I knew I wanted to be a transactional lawyer. Right,
Mhm.
I've had that antipathy toward courtroom since then. Um, I had thought that the bankruptcy practice was going to have a little more negotiating and business solving problems than it did. It turned out to be just like I said, the things that I don't like. There was a lot of arguing of motion practice and formalities and this and that. Um, when I landed at the life insurance company, I was excited by the idea that the real estate transactional practice was what they needed. I'm at that time in the economy, I had to drink from a fire hose, and I learned an awful lot very quickly. It came naturally or sensibly to me, um, and I found my niche. Um, I didn't want to. I didn't want to be a corporate securities lawyer because that's kind of a restricted, small universe of practitioners in New York and some other money centers. Everybody in small town, everybody everywhere knows somebody that buys a drugstore or owns a corner or has an apartment complex. So the universe of clients in that business is larger than a lot of people may anticipate. I am not a residential lawyer. I do mostly commercial work. I will do some higher end cash residential deals. I'm just not set up to help the small first time home buyer. That's a different type of law, different type of law practice, and different type of law firm. Um, but I enjoy the commercial part. For whatever reason. It fits my personality and fits my experience.
And again, you mentioned you have some clients that have been with you for 25 plus years, but overall, do your clients come to you like proactively, or is it like reactively? We've got a problem and we need somebody right away.
Well, actually, I have both.
Okay.
um, I I don't advertise. My advertising basically is word of mouth. I mean, everybody's got a social media presence, right? I have a website for anybody interested, smbpc.com. But most of the clients I've accrued over the years have come through referrals. They've come from other people who I worked for, who sent out, who spoke highly of me. I'm finding that I'm getting an awful lot of referrals these days from other people. And most of them are, hey, I need you to help me plan this transaction or do this. Every once in a while, I'll get, I got to have a deal closed in 2 days. Can you help me? And so far I have, but I don't have people that, I have people that come to me and say, we have a problem, but a real estate problem typically is not something that has to be solved in a day.
Mhm.
Um, it's okay, but the majority of clients I get are bankers or developers who I want to loan against this property. I want to buy this piece of property. Help me do it.
So if you're a client, okay, speaking from a client's point of view, what does success look like if you hire a commercial real estate attorney like yourself?
Let's assume that you wanted to buy a 8-row block of townhomes somewhere in an outlying county. All right.
Mhm.
You've decided that you can spend, and we're making up numbers here, but you've decided that you can spend $2 million on buying 8 townhomes at a proper location. What Once you've made that decision, what you would do is you'll call a broker, you'll get the terms of a deal worked out, and then once you've got a letter of intent signed, you'll find a lawyer typically who you'll ask to write a purchase contract. You'll go through all the particulars about what you want to do. Maybe you want to keep this parking lot. Maybe you want to make the seller repaint it. Maybe you're willing to take a discount because some of the buildings are in need of repair, and you know that you're going to do that after you acquire the property. I'll prepare a contract that does that. Typically there's a period of investigation called a due diligence period. There's a period thereafter where you go get your financing and you close on the transaction. After the contract is signed, I'll help do some of the investigative work. I'll do a title insurance search, a record search, tell you who owns the property and what encumbrances there are on it. I will, make sure that there's a surveyor involved if you need one that'll tell you where the property is located physically on the ground next to a road or wherever the access to the road is. And then if you go get financing, I'll negotiate the loan documents with the lender. Once all of those things are done, we pick a date. The seller comes in. I have the proverbial stack of paper ready. Seller signs its stuff. You sign buyer stuff. You sign lender stuff. We exchange papers. We fund money. Congratulations. You own the 8-townhome project that you were after 90 days ago.
Pop the champagne.
Or whatever's appropriate. Yes.
And I'm sure with 30 years of business, you have a lot of success because of what you've done and what you built. Can you think of a success story or a victory along the way that kind of stands out?
Commercial real estate guys, generally, we're obviously we're in it to make money. I mean, that's the objective. Everybody feels good when they buy something at a fair price and it works the way they want to. I don't get the chance in my line of work to do a whole lot of what I would call good deed things. Mm-hmm. I do remember one thing that I was particularly happy about. It wasn't the largest transaction I've ever done. I want to say that the property in question was like a $3 million piece or something. The seller was a school teacher, and the property had been in her family for, 5 or 6 generations. And they had farmed it. And the farming, the land had gotten too valuable to farm. It was ready to be, incorporated into not incorporated legally, but it was becoming part of where the town was moving to. I had a client at the time who wanted to buy the land, who was going to develop, I can't remember what it was on it, but the notion was he was going to buy these 15 acres from the school teacher and then do his development. And again, being totally respectful, the purchase price was, let's call it $3 million. I knew that a public school teacher who had worked in public schools for 25 years didn't have $3 million in the bank. At least I didn't think she had. And, later I found out she didn't. But the notion, and she was a very nice woman, very nice lady. I think her brother came to the closing with her. The cool thing about that deal was that we closed on it. I was able to help my client spend $3 million that went to this family. And I think it became life-changing money for them and for generations to come.
Mark, you've had such great success, being in business for 30 years, and I'm sure there's so many success stories you can think about. Is there one in particular that comes to mind that, shows some of the value that you bring to a client?
Dan, there is one story that I like to tell from time to time. Real estate lawyers like me, commercial real estate lawyers, we're in it to represent our clients, and our success for us is determined when the transaction goes according to plan. The people end up where they thought they would be when they started talking in the first place. So I rarely get, the I did a good deed today feeling. I do remember one thing. This happened several years ago. I had a client who wanted to buy roughly 15 acres of land that had been in a family for 5 or 6 generations. The land was located in a county that until that time had been one of the outerlying Atlanta county. I think it was in Paulding County or something like that. And the owner was the 5th generation. She was a school teacher in the Fulton County school system. And we entered into this deal and we got it done, and we're sitting at the closing table. And I think the purchase price was like $20,000 an acre. So it was like a $3 million deal. And I kind of figured in the back of my mind that, it's a very nice lady, school teacher for 30 years. I kind of just made the assumption that there might have been some wealth there, but there wasn't millions and millions of dollars lying around in their family. So, and I found that out to be true after the small talk after the closing. And what we ended up doing, I felt really good about it because once the transaction closed, we ended up putting $3 million into her account. Her brother was there with her. And I felt like, this is, again, I don't mean to sound arrogant, but this I thought was life-changing money for that seller. Her generation, her kids, her grandkids. And it just felt good based on what I thought was the case to be able to do something like that for very nice people. Her older brother was there, and these folks were in their 60s at the time. And I asked them, did they want their money wire transferred, or did they want a check? And I suggested they take a wire transfer because it was, a significant amount of money. And the brother said, no, I'm okay. I want the check. So the title company issued the check. I guess he wanted to put it in his hands for a few minutes. Got to the bank, and I hope they're doing well. I haven't followed up with them. I don't know if they are or not, but that day, back in 2006, stands as one of the few times in my career I actually got to do the right thing. So it felt good.
That's a great story. And I'm sure it created, hopefully, generational wealth. And to see that moment where it changed somebody's life, that's got to be a special moment.
It is. And like I said, Dan, I don't get to do that much, right? I don't get to do that very often. I work in a world of numbers and commercial types. And we know what we do, and we know what success looks like to us. I rarely get the opportunity to deal with people on a level like that. And when I can do something good, when I make people feel better, when I can enhance, their wealth, set their lives different in a positive direction, and it feels good. I wish I had more opportunities to do it, but in this line of business, it just didn't come across that much.
That's awesome. One other question. Is there any other parts of law that your firm practices other than real estate law?
Well, it's kind of ancillary to that. I do have a title insurance company that, whenever you kick the tires on a piece of real estate, you always want to buy title insurance, and I can offer that on commercial projects. I've also in the past had opportunity to take the two people that want to start a small business and put them together through operating agreements, help them acquire existing businesses. Sadly, I've had a couple of recent experiences where I've had to represent people who are in business divorces. They get tired of doing what they're doing. Their goals are no longer the same. They get mad at each other. So I can do those kinds of things as well. And part of the real estate practice typically is putting together the equity partner, the developer, the idea person, and making sure that they're realizing their objectives and their investments the way that they've agreed to do it. So I can do those. I do those things as well.
That's great. And Mark, the last question for you is, and this has been a great time spending with you and learning a lot about what you do. If someone's out there listening to this, and we hope there's at least one, right? If something's resonated and somebody's interested in connecting with you, I know you mentioned your website before, but what's the best way to get a hold of you?
The best way to get a hold of me is either through their website. Again, it's www.smbpc.com. There is a link to contact information there, and I'm happy to talk to people. I'll get referrals and inquiries from that from time to time. I'm not like a lot of lawyers. I don't charge from the second I pick up the phone. I like to talk to people. I like to find out if I'm a good fit. I like to find out what they're after. I usually tell people that the first hour is a freebie. It's a consultation. It's learning whether, the person calling, knows what you want. How much do you need me to talk about? What do you not know? And then once we get to that level, some people realize that they need to go somewhere else, and some people come back to me. I'm happy to have those conversations with folks whenever they want to call.
Mark, I really appreciate you taking time. You're a good man. You're a good lawyer. I love seeing you at some of the networking groups that we participate in. And I want to thank you for taking some time to come on the Growth Catalyst Show.
Dan, I appreciate very much being invited on the show. I love doing these kinds of things. I'm happy to help. And if I can be of service to you or your folks, please find me at the website, or you know how to get a hold of me. So thank you for having me.
Mark.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Growth Catalyst Show. Remember, you can take these stories of growth and make them part of your own journey. Learn from them, draw inspiration, and let them guide your path of growth. I'm your host, Dan Mahoney, and I look forward to our next journey together. If you've enjoyed the show, please subscribe and leave a review. Until next time, keep growing.